Good afternoon, evening. I'd like to take this special opportunity to welcome you to the 12th Annual Pinsky Favorite Poem Project, supported by friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We're so glad to have you here this evening. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Robert Pinsky was appointed as the Poet Laureate of the United States in 1997. And very shortly after his appointment, he founded the Favorite Poem Project. It was founded on his belief that, contrary to stereotype, Americans do read poems, that the audience for poetry is not limited to professors and college students, and that many people for whom particular poems have profound personal meaning. The project has sought to give voice to the American audience for poetry, and now successful Pinsky Favorite Poem projects have been developed for libraries, communities, bookshops, and schools. Our wonderful friend and inspiration, Georgia Court, brought the Pinsky Favorite Poem Project to Chautauqua in 2008. And as I said, today we celebrate the 12th annual gathering for the project, and we are glad that you could join us. My name is Wally Reese. I'm the chair of the Pinsky Favorite Poem Project, and the process is that I will briefly introduce each of the readers, then they will introduce their poem and tell us in a few words why they particularly, that poem particularly appeals to them, and then they will read or recite the poem. Our first reader is Lois Lidova. Sorry, Lois. Our first reader is Lois Lidova. She was the writer in residence for the Writers Center from 1993 to 1997, teaching courses such as newspaper magazine writing and basic journalism. She was one of the very fortunate ones for whom Mary Jean Irion was her mentor. She also wrote for the Chautauquan Daily from 2003 to 2007, and her beat was the Department of Religion, and she had the joy of working at that time with Jared Jacobson. I introduce Lois Lidova. Thank you, Lois.
Fred, I think you need to unmute her.
Having once viewed a white owl sitting on a snow-laden limb in my willow tree, I become one of the children in Frost's poem. Questioning Faces by Robert Frost. The winter owl banked just in time to pass and save herself from breaking window glass, and her wings, straining suddenly aspread, caught color from the last of evening red in a display of underdown and quill to glassed-in children at the windowsill.
Thank you, Lois. Our next reader, is David Tabish. He's been a Chautauqua summer resident for over 25 years. He spends his winters in Indiana and PA, and has taught English, speech, theater at both high school and university level. David is a member of the Actors Equity and has acted and directed professionally and academically since 1975. Thank you, David.
To an Athlete Dying Young by A. Houseman is a poem I don't visit often, but every time I come back to it, it sort of haunts me. I think maybe because it gives me the idea that humility should always accompany success. Now, I know that's not really the center of that poem probably, but I am also a person of the generation who answers yes to the question, do you remember where you were when JFK was shot? And also, I'm an actor, and I know a lot of older and younger actors who have struggled with points in their career of up and down, and younger actors who are very successful. And I wonder in years to come, when they have those dry spells, what will happen. So, to an athlete dying young. The time you won your town the race, we chaired you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you, shoulder high. Today, the road all runners come, shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at your threshold down, townsmen of a stiller town. Smart lad, to slip betimes away from fields where glory does not stay, and early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose. Eyes the shady night has shut cannot see the record cut, and silence sounds no worse than cheers after earth has stopped the ears. Now you will not swell the rout of lads that wore their honors out, runners whom renown outran, and the name died before the man. So set before its echoes fade the fleet foot on the seal of shade, and hold to the low lintel up the still defended challenge cup. And round that early laureled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead, and find unwithered on its curls the garland, briefer than a girl's. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Stephanie Hunt is a PhD student and teaching assistant in the American Studies program at the University of Buffalo. Each summer, she is the manager of the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle Octagon at the Chautauqua Institution. Her scholarly interests and love of literature often combine within the Chautauqua community conversations about the CLSC selections, Chautauqua and Janus Prize winners and finalists, and writers in residence books for the season. I introduce Stephanie Hunt.
Thank you, Norma. So the poem I'm going to be reading today is called At 57, My Father Learns to Grow Things by Ruth Ellen Kosher. And this is a poem I came to in a course about place literature. And it's in the collection Black Nature, if you're interested in finding it. And I actually am sitting here with some tomatoes that is from my father's garden. And so this poem for me is a bit nostalgic and tinged with some regrets as well. So, at 57, my father learns to grow things. I prepare to go to the islands, buy hats and bathing suits, flippers that will push even my large body carelessly through too blue water. 2,000 miles away, my father sits on his porch, watches his land, the whole acre, stretched like a small corridor through birch and aspen, sprung from Pennsylvania comb. He has just now discovered the soil, how it responds to water and spikes of plant food, tells me by phone each Sunday the inventory of life. 3 green tomatoes, radishes, cucumbers, melons for the grandkids, zucchini everywhere, but the golden ones, not green. 6 months before, I visit for Christmas and find myself 16 and slim, a photograph in haste as I cringe at the camera, there on his nightstand. I'm suddenly struck by my own absence in his house. Even within my presence, I am gone. Now, while looking once more at the glossy magazine of my island, the stucco balcony where I'll split papayas, I am jealous of the tomatoes in my father's yard, the strawberries that ignore their small pots and root anyway, as he protects them with mesh and clinking cans, turquoise fertilizer that looks like the sea I run to. I can only ask him to send me Brussels sprouts, carefully packaged so the long journey will not cause rot. I can only savor them when they arrive, like a success between us that closes and opens the long distance home. Thank you.
Beautiful, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Our next reader is Carrie Oliver Zachary. Carrie lives in Fort Worth, Texas. I saw that, eating tomatoes, and is presently a virtual teacher for the last 3 or 4 years in the local school system. Carrie is a lifelong Chautauquan, the daughter of a homeowner. And during the season, she has the tough job of acting as the co-commissioner for the Chautauqua Softball League. I've heard a lot about the competition and the competitive spirit. In her off time, she's the chair of the local chapter of the Now Gen, which is a group connecting young adults of their 20s through their 40s in community, philanthropy, and leadership. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. I'll be reading The Homework Machine by Clara Silverstein. This has always been one of my most favorite poems. And as education is pivoting as right before our very eyes, I think it's a great reminder of doing your work and focusing on success and getting the job done. So here's The Homework Machine. The homework machine. Oh, the homework machine. Most perfect contraption that's ever been seen. Just put in your homework, then drop in a dime. Snap on a switch, and in 10 seconds time, your homework comes out, quick and clean as can be. Here it is, 9 plus 4. And the answer is 3. 3? Oh, me. I guess it's not as perfect as I thought it would be.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Thank you, Carrie. Our next reader is Clara Silverstein. Clara is the former director of the Chautauqua Writers Center programming and is a veteran of many Chautauqua writing workshops. Clara is the author of 5 books. I happen to know she's a wonderful cook, and 3 of those are the most fascinating looking cookbooks. Her poems have been published in many literary magazines, including The Blackbird, and her poems have been posted at the Boston City Hall. Thank you, Clara.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. The poem I chose is by Pablo Neruda, and in a nice local connection, the translator is Dennis Maloney, who runs White Pine Press in Buffalo. And it's in an anthology called Finding the Way Home that White Pine Press put out. It's one of my very favorite poetry anthologies. I've literally brought it around the world with me because I always find interesting things in it. I chose the poem I Will Return because it reminds me of what happens after somebody passes away. I think that this is where their spirit might dwell. And I am especially thinking of my mother and my sister, who I both lost in recent years. I will return. Some other time, man or woman, traveler. Later, when I am not alive, look here. Look for me between stone and ocean, in the light storming through the foam. Look here, look for me, for here I will return without saying a thing, without voice, without mouth, pure. Here I will return to be the churning of the water, of its unbroken heart. Here I will be discovered and lost. Here I will perhaps be stone and silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. And our new best friend at the Literary Arts of Chautauqua Institution is Sony Taunami. In January of this year, Sony was appointed as the new director of Literary Arts at Chautauqua. For the previous 2 years, he had been working at the Chautauqua Writers Center and in the poetry space. He's been very instrumental in getting a lot of kids excited about both reading and writing their poetry. Children love spending time in the poetry makerspace, creating their own poems, and then Sony provides the opportunity for them to read them aloud at the open mic on the veranda. Welcome, Sony.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Norma. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center, for keeping this wonderful tradition alive this year. I know Norma is in Australia now, and we are all over the place. We commune here in the spirit of Chautauqua. Thank you also for letting me read this beautiful poem by Adrian Matishka. And the reason I chose this poem is because it captures, and I believe, the pleasures and also the perils of being a Black person in the United States. The title is Collectible Blacks by Adrian Matishka. This is the G-dropping vernacular I'm stuck in. This is the polyphone where my head is an agrarian gang sign pointing like a percussion mallet to a corn maze in one of the smaller Indiana suburbs where there aren't supposed to be Black folks. Be cool and try to grin it off. Be cool and try to lean it off. Find a kind of Black and bet on it. I'm grinning to this vernacular like the big drum laugh tracks a patriotic marching band. Be cool and try to ride a beat the same way me, Choir, and Wa did driving across the 30th Street Bridge, laughing at these two dudes with big afros like it's 1981, peeing into the water and looking at the stars. Right before Officer Friendly hits his lights. Face the car, fingers locked behind your heads. Right after the fireworks starting popping off. Do I need to call the drug dog? Right after the rattling windows, mosquitoes as busy in my ears as 4th of July traffic cops. Right before the thrill of real planets and pretend planets spawn high into the sky, while throwing up 3 West Side fingers, each winged by pyrotechnic glory in the misdemeanor of the 3 of us grinning at the cops club down swinging at almost the exact same time. Choir says, cops put a hurting on your ass, man. And fireworks lit up in the same colors as angry knuckles if you don't duck on the double. Especially on the West Side, more carnivorous than almost any other part of Earth Voyager saw when it snapped a blue picture on its way out of this violently technicolor yellow sphere. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sony. Thank you. Our next reader is Georgia Court, who is a former president of the Chautauqua Writers Center, and along with Marianne Moorfield was instrumental in leading the renovations and additions of the Writers Center at Alumni Hall at Chautauqua Institution. Georgia has been the driving force and a very generous contributor of her time and skills to the Chautauqua Institution for many years. A former college teacher, Georgia now owns and operates an independent bookstore in Florida. Bookstore 1, Sarasota, was opened in 2011. I say yay, independent bookstores. Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you, Norma. And I'm happy to be here reading. I'm happy to see that this is continuing. It's really great. I plan to read today a Richard Blanco poem entitled Complaint of El Rio Grande. And the reason I picked this poem is I heard Richard read this actually at Chautauqua last year in 2019. And I love his poetry in general, but this one really moved me. It pretty much brought me to tears because what it does is it illustrates so clearly how callous our country has become, particularly related to immigrants and their value to us. So this is Complaint of El Rio Grande. I was meant for all things to meet, to make the clouds pause in the mirror of my waters, to be home to fallen rain that finds its way to me, to turn eons of loveless rock into lovesick pebbles, and carry them as humble gifts back to the sea which brings life back to me. I felt the sun flare, praised each star, flocked about the moon long before you did. I've breathed air you'll never breathe, listened to songbirds before you could speak their names, before you dug your oars in me, before you created the gods that created you. Then countries, your invention, maps, jigsawing the world into colored shapes, caged in bold lines to say, you're here, not there. You're this, not that. To say, yellow isn't red, red isn't black, black is not white. To say, mine, not ours. To say war and believe life's worth is relative. You named me Big River, drew me, blue, thick to divide. To say spick and Yankee, to say wetback and gringo. You split me in two, half of me us, the rest them. But I wasn't meant to drown children, hear mothers' cries, never meant to be your geography, a line, a border, a murderer. I was meant for all things to meet, the mirrored clouds and sun's tingle, bird songs and the quiet moon, the wind and its dust, the rush of mountain rain, and us. Blood that runs in you is water flowing in me, both life. The truth we know. Be one in one another. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Georgia. Our next reader is Wally Reese. He's a former board member of what is now the Friends of the Chautauqua Writer Center. He's been a participant at many prose and poetry workshops. And he's the lucky guy who was chosen to live down here with me in beautiful Lakes Entrance in Australia. Wally Reese is an Arizona State University Sun Devil. Thank you, Wally. Just speak, John.
There we go. Thank you, Norma. Greetings from down under on the south coast of Victoria, Australia. My poem is Treat Yourself by Emile Penet. He's a Canadian, I believe a French Canadian. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in current events, pandemic lockdown, political chaos, or the plight of immigrants, as Georgia's poem so eloquently illustrated. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in all these things that we forget about the easy things we can do to make ourselves feel better. I like this poem by Penet because he uses old-fashioned end rhymes that we never use anymore, like A-B, A-B, that seem to fit the simple remedy he suggests. It's not complicated, no deep metaphor involved, just treat yourself. Treat yourself. I invite you to go wild. Laugh until your sides near burst and play like you were a child, letting raindrops quench your thirst. Start a fire with scraps of wood or sculpt castles made of sand and pick berries that taste good or build forts to scout the land. Splash in the creek in bare feet, chasing fish that swim away, and track monsters to defeat sweating heat of summer's day. Giggle at the dog's kisses or run like you'll never stop and poke a snake that hisses or climb a tree to the top. Gaze at clouds billowing by in the middle of the day and treat yourself to peach pie like every day's your birthday. Sorry, the first part of that I had a big echo, so I don't know if it sounded very okay to you. Thank you.
And our last but not least reader of today is Shara Babcock, who is the retired Vice President Emily Smucker Chair for Education. Among other duties, she was responsible for Chautauqua's morning lectures and literary arts. Over many years of leading us into the morning lectures, she became famous for her sense of humor and her wonderful way she individually introduced the morning speakers. So in her spirit, I say, fellow Chautauquans, writers, readers, and lovers of poetry, please welcome Shara Babcock.
Thank you, Norma. That was fun. I've chosen a poem that I just became aware of. I like Wendell Berry's work, but this was a poem that I did not know until Ginger Gaines Sorelli, who was one of the chaplains at Chautauqua a couple of years ago, sent it to me a few weeks ago. I have since learned that it was written in 1983. And I think if you listen to it carefully, you would think it was written yesterday. The name of it is The Real Work by Wendell Berry. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. Thank you.
Thank you, Shara. In these troubled times, we remember the impeded stream is the one that sings. So that's the finale of our readers. We just have a couple of PSs and PPSs. In honor of Robert Pinsky, I believe that the words of Mary Oliver also remind us that poems are not words at all, but fires for the cold, ropes let down to the lost, and something as necessary as bread in the pockets of the hungry. And I ask you to continue spreading this wonderful world of poetry in the world. I would like to introduce our host, moderator, whatever title he'd like to accept as Fred Zohm, to just give us a little wrap up and tell us about the wonderful work that he is doing as executive director of the Friends of Chautauqua Writers Center, along with a couple of volunteers.
All right, several volunteers. Thank you so much, Norma, for your always gracious and adept hosting of this event. Great applause to you. We're right, okay. Also, I'm gonna mute Wally so he doesn't hog the screen. And I'm just dealing with something here. Little technical thing. It's marvelous how poetry in particular and literature in general brings people together from literally all around the world, especially with our Australian friends here. I did want to alert you to a few things in chat. If you look at chat, there should be two things there for you. One is if you missed the title of a poem or who wrote the poem or who read the poem, that is there near the top of chat. And if Dave Tabish is still there, could you unmute yourself for a second and just say hello?
Yes, hello.
Okay. Dave's camera wasn't on when he was reading, and I didn't want to interrupt that beautiful reading by sending you a message to do that. So, but I did want people to put a face with the voice.
Well, and in fact, if I may, I saw just my name there, but I thought you had adjusted something, so I didn't want to change, as I said earlier.
No, I hadn't done anything. I think it was a gremlin or something who crept in. The other thing that's on chat relates to the next thing I'll be talking about. If you go further down, oh, we're getting some comments too. Thank you for the comments. Okay. That there's a link to www.chq.org/FCWC. That is the place to click on if you want to find anything about the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center, and especially links that I might be mentioning. Favorite Poem Project is one of our special annual events. I'm so glad, so grateful to Norma for continuing it this year, to Georgia, who along with Robert Pinsky started it at Chautauqua. So that's wonderful. Tomorrow, another of our events, this one weekly rather than annually, occurs, the Authors Hour. Every Thursday at 12:15 on Zoom, we present local authors connected with Chautauqua to read from their work. Tomorrow, for instance, we have Pat Averbach. She at one point was head of the Writers Center and has become quite an accomplished poet and novelist. She'll be reading from her second novel that's been very well reviewed and is up for a couple awards, Resurrecting Rain. We'll also be having the poet Shara McCollum, who has taught at Chautauqua several times. She's a marvelous poet. We're lucky to have her on the Authors Hour. She'll be reading from two of her poetry collections, Mad Woman and This Strange Land. Another event we sponsor, Sundays at 5 o'clock, is open mic. People 18 or over, and I think you're all over 18, are welcome to either read or just listen to people presenting their work. If it's a small enough group, we actually critique what is read. Larger group, they just present it. Also on Sunday is the deadline for the annual writing contest. So please, if you're a writer, consider submitting your work. Also consider joining the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center, because then if you submit your work, you don't have to pay the $5 reading fee. And as well, you'll get a $5 discount on the Chautauqua Literary Journal. You can go to that website also to find the Zoom links to the Zoom events that I mentioned, and the YouTube links to Authors Hour and also to the Favorite Poem Project. It'll probably take the day to get the link going, but it will be there. I think that does it. Just in general, the Friends support and supplement the wonderful work of the institution's Writers Center. And by doing so, we hope to encourage writers and promote writing at Chautauqua, but especially these Zoom days around the world. I want to thank you. And let's, I forgot to alert everybody to two things. One, the reactions, which is lower right if you want to react. But why don't we all unmute, everybody unmute, and let's have a final last hurrah, okay? Unmute, 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 unmute.
Hooray!
Before we, sorry, Fred, just before we all leave, I just sent the Zoom link to Marianne Moorfield last night, inviting her to join us. And she wrote back and said she had had nothing to do with Chautauqua this summer because a month ago she broke her hip and has been in the hospital rehabbing ever since, and hopes to go home tomorrow. So send love and best wishes to
all
Marianne.
send good wishes to Marianne.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
For letting
I just
us know.
wanted to share that with you.
Sure. Sorry to hear.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you hear me? I can't
Yes.
tell This is Karma. Will this be available? Has this been recorded? Will this be available to maybe send on to some other people?
Yes, what I was saying is that the YouTube link will be available on the webpage, the www.chq.org/FCWC. Sometime tomorrow, I hope that it's up and running. You go down to Authors Hour and there'll be not just the Zoom link, which will be out of date by then, but the YouTube link. Or if you want to, and you go on YouTube and you search for Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center channel, for some reason it doesn't come up first, but it'll be there. And you can go there and see all the videos that have been done so far. Authors Hour, and also
Favorite poems. And the favorite poems.
And the favorite poems, yes.
Fred, if you'd like, you can send me the link and I can put it in the newsletter as well.
We'll do that. I'll put you and Megan and Tony all on. I'm lazy. I'll put you all on the same email. Okay?
Sounds
okay.
good.
Okay. Fabulous.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay. Thank you.
Great job, everyone.
I miss you guys. See you next year.
And Norma. Yeah.
Next year in Chautauqua.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Next year at the Hall of Philosophy.
Next year,
Yeah. So
next
many
year will
thanks.
be wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
Bye.
Hello, Jill.
Bye-bye. Good.
Bye-bye.